You can also do changing of cases, so uppercase to lowercase, for example, and again, you will see why this is a good thing to know. So I've explained, for example, the difference between, or I've explained to you what a method was, but maybe not what the difference was between a method and a function. So a method, a lot of times it looks like a function, but whereas a function normally can be used everywhere, like the print function, sometimes called a statement. You can use it on both numbers and strings, but you would have, for example, certain methods that can only be used on certain data types. So for example, your microwave, you're not going to use, if you import your kitchen library that has a microwave, you're not going to necessarily find the microwave method when you import the toilet library, for example. So some of the things are very specific to certain libraries. So this dot upper and dot lower are two methods that you won't use on numbers. I don't know if people have done it or why they would do it, but I've never converted the number to an uppercase or a lowercase. Right? So you can see why this doesn't really pertain to numbers. But just so that we go over the syntax again. So syntax is the way things need to be structured for the programming language to recognize what it's being asked to do. If you, for example, if you know different languages, you will know that switching between the one language to the other, for example, English to French or any other language, if you try and use Google Translate, it would do a direct translation of each one of those word for word in most cases, but it might not necessarily be the way that you would write the sentence, because sometimes the verb comes ahead in some languages, for example. So that's where syntax comes in. In Python, you need to know exactly how to write the thing, what comes before what. So with methods, you would normally have dot and the method name, and then open brackets. Sometimes, like I said, there would be an argument inside of it, and sometimes they won't. In this case, with dot upper and dot lower, it's normally empty. Okay, so let's say you've got your DNA sequence over here. This is an example. So you've got my DNA, and you've got, again, this sequence in there, which, again, now this is not going to print, but if I want to print this, for example, to show you, I would use the print function, and I would print that, and it would do exactly what you would say. If I, for example, want to change this to lowercase, I can then say print DNA.lower, or if you wanted to do it in a variable name, for example, but let me just first print this so that you see, and it will change that to lowercase. But if this looks a little too complicated, all we did was we said, now again, this is explained in the Python for Biologists book. I'm just also going over the notes again, but you should be familiar with it if you went through the book. So you've got, all I did was I took this DNA and I applied the dot lower, like I said here, the dot lower method on it, and then I placed this into, because print itself has a parenthesis like that, I would have to take this and put it inside the print. That's why it looks like it just has so many brackets there. But if you do it step by step, then you will see that it is kind of intuitive. Now, you could have also said, for example, if you wanted to really do it properly, you could have said lowercase DNA is equal to DNA.lower, and then you would print. Now this is not going to work because I put the print statement before I even created this line. Right, so you can see it will give an error. It's not defined, so you have to first define your variable before you can print it. Again, intuitive stuff, but so that does exactly the same thing. Okay, this is just a shorter version, and like I said, so in cases like this is where people, once you start putting in and you have all these brackets with doing a method upon a method upon a method, you would then use a comment to say, creating, DNA variable and changing to lowercase, for example. But depending on what's in there, you would add all of your things that you've done inside your comment. Okay, so like I said, yes, your variable name will come first, and then you apply the .lower method on there. But with functions, the function name comes first, and then you would add the variable name inside the function, or whatever you want to do inside the function. So in other words, with methods, you would say, here's my thing, this is what I want you to do with it, right? So here's my thing, this is the method I want you to apply to it. With functions, you would say, here's my function, this is what I want you to apply my function on. So they kind of get swapped in that when it's a function, the function name comes first. When it's a method, the method name comes afterwards. So that's one of the ways in which you can recognize the difference between a method and a function. And again, methods tend to be very linked to and limited to certain data types, whereas functions usually can, depending on what the function is supposed to do. If the function is, for example, a function that divides something and then multiplies something and then, takes a square root of something, then maybe you're not going to use that function on text, but usually they should work throughout your code.